Once again, a very warm welcome to all of our attendees this morning. And thank you very much to IOPSA, SIOSH, as well as PRB for their input, as well as the excelling time that they are putting forth in providing and promoting occupational health and safety services in the industry. We also want to say thank you very much to all of you who have been reaching out to us over the past couple of weeks. In fact, for those of you who have been with us from the beginning, it's been a few years that we've been chatting back and forth and made some really good friendships. We just really want to say thank you to you for giving us such good information out there of what is happening out in the industry. And this really helps us to give you feedback as well as topics that are needed out there. What is happening on a day-to-day basis. So once again, thank you very much for everybody that joins us this morning. We're going to move straight into our toolbox talk for this morning, which is power tools. So electrocutions and shocks from a power tool happen all the time. Now, as plumbers, you're obviously using drill machines, using grinders. When you get to a site, the site has its own wiring, and oftentimes we do not look for other services in the area. Now, speaking to some of you about power tools or even electricity at some stages, you might use your power tool. And when we're speaking about site wiring, we're not mentioning specifically wiring that is coming to and from your geysers or hydro boils in order to power or energize those items. What we are saying is sometimes the wiring on site is so bad that when you plug your power tool into it, it could be dangerous for you. So if you have any doubt as to whether the wiring or the power tool where you are connecting your socket to is going to be dangerous, why not stop and think about the electrical hazards that can be found on that site? Now, avoiding any electrical shock, whether you're at home or whether you're at work, is extremely important. We do say that it is a silent killer. Often you don't see it, it doesn't make any noise. When you hear the noise, often it's too late. So it requires that we have to have good awareness programs, such as toolbox talks, as well as safety talks that you should have separately with your own staff members. And we need to identify what the causes are of these electric shock. So in particular, we are going to take a look at power tools, but remember the cause is always the hazard. What is the hazard that is arising that creates the risk? Well, a lot of dangers and some of the most common and serious electrical injuries occur when electrical current flows between hands and feet. Now, why do we say that? Well, generally, when a person touches an energized line, the electrical energy is looking for the shortest path to the ground. So if it goes through the feet, it's looking for the shortest path back to the ground. So generally it shocks your foot and you ground it immediately. So it could be a light one. Oftentimes somebody steps on a cable and gets a shock and they jump off of it. Sometimes it's not serious, sometimes it is very serious, depending on the amount of electricity or the amperage of that actual cable. But when it touches the hands or anything above, it is looking for the closest way to get to the ground. Now, what happens here is it passes through the body, and this passes through lungs, it passes through your heart, and this often are the items that get damaged. Now, we don't want to live without our heart, we do not want to live without our lungs or any other bodily organ that we have, because the functions make our body continue going. So any damage to these types of organs can be fatal. Now, many times we've seen it before, somebody gets electrocuted or a shock and they survive. They say everything is fine, maybe it wasn't too serious. Sometimes many people find it funny and they can send videos around of somebody having a shock. But it is extremely dangerous, because on the wrong occasion, with somebody touching or electrocuting themselves on a cable, it could create the environment where the person is now having this energy or this electricity flowing through their body, and what it does is it starts burning the inside of a person's organs, and this is really just deadening all of those organs. This is how fatal electrocutions happen. Now, when this happens, generally a person wants to let go of the cable, but grabbing it with your hand, obviously it contracts your muscles and it holds your hand onto that item. Now, we've heard it before. There was a few case studies. We're not going to do a case study today, but I spoke to a guy, also a plumber, who was using a drilling machine. It was a core drilling machine that he was going, obviously straight through a wall. And as he was coring with this machine, the machine itself shorted out inside the actual body, probably because of the amount of use it has had. But at the same time, the vibrations actually inside that body caused things to move around and shake around. And obviously, the electrocution came from inside the actual body. Now, his left hand that he was holding the top of the body instantly shot off, but his hand on the right-hand side that he was holding the actual handle of the core drill stayed on the drill. And somebody had to actually push him off in order to get him to stop being electrocuted. So because the core drill was in the wall, it wasn't moving him away. It was getting stuck inside the wall. It was continuing to drill, and his hand, being contracted from the muscles because of the electrocution, was continually holding on to that drill. So this person was obviously being electrocuted for a few seconds until somebody noticed and pushed him away. Now, this is where a lot of dangers come in. Are we inspecting the tools that you are working with? Because he didn't see inside of that tool. But when I asked, did it go for maintenance? Was it sent in for maintenance according to the manufacturer's requirements? I'm sure you can guess what the answer was. Well, it didn't look like it was broken, so it was fine. Now, when you drive a vehicle, it doesn't look like it's broken when you take it in to have its oil service or filter services or your small or major maintenance done. This is because it is servicing something in order for it not to break down. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be broken in order for it to create a danger. It could be on its way to breaking because of lack of service or maintenance. Now, a lot of times, many of you speaking to us out there in the industry said that you've had hot or heated cables. You've touched it after a little time, pulling it out of the socket, and now the cable is extremely hot. Why does this happen? Well, why does this happen? It is incorrect or damaged wiring, or even overloading of that actual socket, which is essentially overloading the DV board. Now, when we overload or we have damaged or incorrect wiring, this creates friction inside of the actual cables. This is either because there is not a solid connection from input to output. In other words, the male and female, when they are connected, it is not touching properly and it's causing a loose connection, or the actual wiring on a three-prong plug is wired incorrectly. So neutral and ground or live and neutral have been moved around. Live and ground has been swapped around, and it hasn't been done by an actual electrician. And so we just DIY our power tools. We put on a new plug without actually inspecting it properly. Overloading the board, we've seen this before. Here's a small picture on the top left-hand corner of an example. We understand when we get to some sites, there are not sufficient outlets. It's a construction site, perhaps. You are still in construction phase, which means the electricity is not everywhere. And so we overload the socket because everybody needs to get their work done. And because of project time frames and timelines, maybe we're a little bit behind. Maybe there's been a power outage, and now everybody needs to perform their work at the same time. And this is where we find a lot of overloading. Now, who's at fault? Well, time is at fault. Nobody can reach some of the timelines on projects, and so we need to try and get it done as soon as possible. Recognize the danger. From overloading, you could heat up those sockets, you could create fire. From overloading, you could damage the wiring or damage the piece of equipment and tool that you're working with. Then we have gotten to many sites, and in particular, we want to chat about not just the power tool itself, but the electric cable that we are using in order to power these tools. So it's called an extension cord. Why? Because the power tool that we are using has a cord maybe that's 0.5 meter to 1 meter long, and it is just too far away from a plug point. So we need to extend this cable of the actual power tool in order to get it to a power point. Now, many on site are using the incorrect thickness of power cables. So it's a very thin electric cord that has just been joined multiple times in order to get your own length of cable. Well, why is this wrong? Well, many of you out there are plumbers. If I had to ask, if I needed to get correct flow from a water tank that is outside about 20 meters away from me, and I only used a very small, thin copper pipe or PVC pipe, very small pipe, running all the taps of my home from 30 meters away, am I going to have good pressure? Am I going to have the right amount of flow? Well, you're going to say to me, well, depends on a lot of things. But generally, you're going to go for a slightly bigger pipe, depending on the amount of pressure. Do I have a booster pump? There's a whole lot of things that you are going to look at. And then you are going to give me the right size pipe for my installation. In other words, a little bit of thought and planning had to go into performing that installation. Why do we not put the same amount of thought into selecting the correct type of electrical cables, especially in this case, electrical extension cables for the power tools that we are using? We need a 20, 30, 40, 50 meter one. When we go and purchase them, make sure that they are the right, I'm not going to say name brand, but they have been correctly inspected and completely built. It's not just ones that are being bought from a side shop down the road. And why do we say that? Well, you can take a very thin wire as long as you want, but the amount of current that is running through that is either going to start dropping over a certain amount of time, and you're going to lose power, and you could end up damaging your tool. If it is not the correct type of wiring, it will then overheat, and if it is not insulated correctly, it will start burning through, and it will generally burn through on the inside where it is the thinnest wiring, and you will start getting burns or perhaps even fire and electrocution. So again, why does this happen? Well, poor planning. We need to ensure that we take a look at registers and checklists, making sure we do not have damaged tools. Make sure that we have performed maintenance on the actual power tool itself. We do not want to have lack of knowledge. So if you do not have the correct knowledge, well, just ask. There are many out there that are willing to help, including ourselves. If you want more information on power tools, please do not hesitate to get in contact with us. And then negligence is a very big one. Oftentimes we are pulling on the actual power tool instead of moving it with our hands, picking it up ourselves, unwinding it properly. All we do is we have the power tool in our hand and we just pull on the power tool in order to get a little bit more longer cabling. So we do not want to do that. This is going to damage the tool. It's also going to damage the cable that we are using. And essentially, you could pull out those cables or those wirings, and that can create a huge hazard for yourself as well. Now, on the bottom left-hand side, we're saying that you can change all of this. You have the power to change these items. Well, why do we say that? Well, it's because inspections are really in your hand. Before you use a tool, make sure you check and inspect them. Ensure the insulation around the wiring is in good condition. Now you might say, well, I've got a 50-meter cable, Chris. Well then, it's going to take you a little bit of extra time to go through each inch of that cable to ensure that the insulation around there does not have any nicks or kinks or cuts or breaks. Remember, who are you protecting? Well, the operator of that power tool, essentially yourself. So if you are not inspecting it, you are putting your own life in the hands of a power tool. Then maintain the power tool and keep it in working condition. If the bushes need to be replaced after every certain amount of hours or months, according to the manufacturer, just abide by what their regulation or what their maintenance standard is. This will ensure the longevity of the actual power tool, and it will ensure that hazards such as broken wiring or incorrect wiring or damaged wiring is not going to occur in the risk of you being shocked or electrocuted. Then never ever use a damaged power tool. It will create that problem. Maybe not now. You might have gotten away with it. Remember, we've said you might be lucky, but it doesn't mean you are safe. A hazard is creeping around the corner, waiting for someone to use damaged tools. Then never inspect a power tool while it is plugged in. And here we have the lockout tagout rule. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have an entire lockout tagout system. For certain types of power tools or power energy machines and equipment, you need to formally have a lockout tagout system in place. But what can we do with the actual principles of locking out and tagging out? Well, it means switching off the current to the power tool. And this would mean, if we take a look in the next picture, before we inspect anything, we switch everything off, we unplug it, and we inspect it. Before we plug it in, we make sure that the tool is actually off as well. We then plug it in and switch the switch on. How many of you have seen a switch on and plug it in any case? How many of you have heard the connection between the electric point on the socket and the actual plug while installing or while putting it in to that socket? Thinking to yourself, wow, you can actually hear the electricity inside there. Well, if you've done that, you automatically creating the potential for not just overloading, but for the incorrect connection of that outlet as well as that socket. And this is where, done over a certain period of time, done many, many times, and when complacency comes into it, we start creating the hazard for ourselves. So none of us want to get hurt. Then why do accidents happen? Well, simply put, we take shortcuts. We're tired, we become complacent. We don't stop to think about what is going to happen if we fail to follow the safety standards. So remember, it's very, very simple. You need to put the value of your life more than the value of the tool that you own, because we do not want to value our tools more than our own life. In other words, you are putting your safety in the hands of a power tool instead of taking the time out to inspect them, perform your maintenance, and connect and use them in the correct manner. So at the end of the day, what can we say about power tools? Well, be safe when using it. Protect yourself from electric shock. It is actually in your power to do so. So if you are an operator or you are using any power tools, why not, before you start work today, go ahead, do the inspections of your power tools, and do not forget the inspection on the actual electric cable. Remember, it becomes an extension of our power tool and then must also be inspected as well. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we did have a Toolbox talk on registers and checklists, which we changed to returning to work post-COVID, and we left out registers and checklists for another time. However, we do have a plethora of registers and checklists for you to use, including portable electrical tools as well as electric cables. Now, if you'd like that information, please reach out to us again. Many of you have got it on the Dropbox link already. Just go in there, take a look at the templates, and you'll find all the registers and checklists there. If there are any missing and you need a register or checklist for something, just drop us a mail and say, Chris, please, can you look out for a register or checklist on this item, as we would need that, and I will go ahead and put it on for every person so that in case you need it in the future, you do have access to it. Thank you very much for listening to us this morning. We really appreciate it. We want to say thank you to all of those who have attended this morning. Please reach out to anybody else who you would feel would benefit from these Toolbox Talks every Tuesday morning. Please continue to send us mails, WhatsApps, and all that information. We do appreciate it. You are not bugging us. If you've sent us a mail, we haven't replied, we apologize, but feel free to send us another one. Continue to bug us. We really, really do appreciate it, and we value your feedback as well. Next week, we are looking at dealing with dust outside or inside the working environment and how that affects us as well, and what can you do to deal with the dust on your site or even in your offices. Guys, if you have not received that email for the deep cleaning inspection last week, you will notice it is on the screen in front of you. It is quite an extensive document. Some stuff might be not applicable for you at your specific office, your workshop. Maybe even you want to use this just for vehicles. What I would suggest is if you have any changes that you would like to make, please send me an email so that I can send you this in Word document. Then you can cut out and change some of the stuff that's in there. What we would suggest is you do not change too much because this is in accordance with what the Department of Health requires. So if you take a look, it basically asks you the question on ceilings, and then you literally put yes or no. What we are requesting is that you do not tick the box. Ticking the box is yes and no. A tick is yes sometimes and a cross is no. However, it's very easy to change either of those. And what we would suggest is rather to write in the actual word yes or write in the actual word no, or put NA for not applicable. And then make sure you actually in the comments write why this is not applicable, why it is no, and why it is yes. And then obviously put your action that you need to take or recommendations that you need to put forth. It goes through ceilings, floors. It will cover things like the walls, the ventilation shafts, as well as the actual areas in and around the entire office, the entire workshop. It goes even down to window cleaning, your storerooms. We take a look at all surfaces. Here we cover surfaces from pens, desktops, staplers, all the handles of any items that are high touch areas, as well as any other areas that really are called surface areas, because all of these really must be cleaned, especially in a deep clean. Now, when does a deep clean happen? Well, we are suggesting to our clients that a deep clean happens once every 3 months. However, the Department of Health guideline is only to have a deep clean once you have had a positive case of COVID-19. This is when a deep clean is needed. Or if you're going into an area where someone who has had COVID has entered and you know that that person has been there before. We then take a look at visual inspections on the actual equipment that we are using as well. This is important, and it was something that I added in just so that you have it on the same inspection document. You can then tell if your inspection for your foggers or your sprayers are also intact. Whether you're using handheld or electrical ones, it can be used for either. We then will also answer questions about COVID-19. Have all employees been screened? This would mean that the person filling in this document not only performs a deep clean, but also needs to check the registers and checklists as well as the screening documentation right at the beginning of his work shift. Then any other areas that may not have been noted on this document. And please ensure that the person doing the inspection signs this document, as well as his immediate manager or the manager in charge of that building. This is the responsibility really of management to ensure those who are protected in their company are protected against COVID-19. So 2 people taking responsibility for this is a lot better than just one. So we hope you enjoy this document. Again, if you do need to have any changes made, download it in PDF. You can make your notes on the actual document, send it back to me, tell me what you want to change. I can change it for you as well. But really, we do not want to change too much of the document, and then we lose the essence of what the Department of Health is asking us to do in terms of a deep clean. So thank you once again. We really look forward to reaching out to you. And for those of you who wanted more information on the app, please just drop me a mail and I'll make sure to send you that information as soon as possible.